Here again with stories that's come from our families. I've brought you a story from my family. It's a long time one. I've heard it a number of times, and my father did this to me. And so he tells it as a story in our family. And who knows, hearing that may is sort of encourage you to think about things that have happened in your family and how you'll bring them out to talk about. Well, when I was in the second grade, my parents took me out of public schools in Charlotte, North Carolina, me and my sister, and sent us to Sacred Heart Academy in Belmont. And that was in the summer. But the reason that they did it was to avoid the polio that was going about in Charlotte because polio was coming after children. My mother was scared because now my father was overseas in India in World War II. Dad was gone, we were there, and all this thing was so frightening that she talked to people that she knew at Sacred Heart in Belmont, and they brought us in the summertime with four other children. Well, it had many, many things going on with that. I happened to love that piece. The place was wonderful. The hey, the nuns were terrific. And so I was there for almost 2 years. And then my father came home. His people in India were sent home. The war was over for them. And so he was back. He was back. And as soon as he came back, he made a push to bring us home. And that was in the middle of the year, right after the winter uh, classes. He then brought us home so that we had our first Christmas back in the apartment where we lived. Now, we had been living in Charlotte on Hawthorne Lane in a very large building, but the apartments were very small, two bedrooms, a kitchen, and a living room, and of course, a bathroom. But I was just the first of their children. When daddy left home, there were three children for mother to take care of. Me, I'm the oldest, then Linda, who's the next one, and Kathy, who was a baby. She wasn't even a year old at that time. So you can get the sort of the stress that was going out when you've got polio on your backside, your husband is gone, and you've got your own job to help get money in. Well, here we were again, a family. We were a family now. Have you thought about that in your family? How you're brought together? Well, it wasn't all that wonderful for me. I was now 9 years old, going on 10. And when we got back in the apartment, I had been living in a large room with other bugs, other beds, but the stuff was mine. There was a little bit of space that was mine. And when we got back to the apartment, I was in a room that had two little sisters in it, and I didn't appreciate the fact that there I was, the oldest one, and their little fingers went into any drawer that I had or any box that I had put things in. They were very curious, and I got angry and angry and angry. I told mother about it. I want a private place. I'm getting old now here, and I want a private place from these little girls, as though I wasn't a little girl as well. But she seemed to understand it. when I talked to her about it. And she went away over to her mother's house where there was an attachment to the garage where they stored stuff. And she brought back a desk that she had used when she was a girl about my age. It's one of those where the lid rolls back and there was a little chair that went with it. Now, the only chance for this to work, there was a little closet in this bedroom that we had in our room. And it did fit right inside. We slid it out on the side of the small closet and it fit. And then I could bring the chair in. It was a small chair, but they could bring that in. Well, of course, it had no light, but Daddy figured out how to get a string, put it up on the top, let it come down with a bulb, and I could turn it on and off so that if I wanted to go into my office to do my work, I could. I could write, I could color, I could think, I could talk, I could shut the door and have those other two out in the room. The only thing that was dangerous about what I was doing was that I might choke without any enough breath. So I had to be very careful how long I stayed in that closet. And we were there 2 more years. 2 more years before my parents found a house that they could purchase and that we could move to. By this time, I was in a Piedmont Junior High School, not too far from our apartment, a little further out from where we were going to be living now. It was so, have you ever had anything that just made you happier than you ever thought you would be? Well, that's how I felt when I got over and saw that house. It was a little house. It was a little square box. There was a collection of these little houses made for veterans. You walked in. You walked into a living room, and straight in on one side, there was a square hallway, just a little square hallway. And up in the front was the bedroom for Mother and Daddy. Well, that was nice for them. And then there was another bedroom on that same place, that same hallway, square hallway. And that was for Kathy and Linda. And then there was this little teeny room that was going to be my room, my room. Now, Linda and Kathy got two new beds. They did. And that didn't bother me one bit because I got the bunk beds that we'd been using for a number of years. But it was fine because it stood up. I would be sleeping on the up of it. And I had a lower one for a guest if I had wanted somebody to come and spend the night. And then that room entered into the kitchen. There was a door. And then if you were in that outside in the square, you walked into the living room and then back around the dining room and then into the kitchen. Do you think about how that works? You walked in to the dining room, you walked down through the dining room, then into the kitchen. And if you came from my room, you came through that little hallway and you came into my room, which I closed the door, and you walked over to another door that entered into the kitchen. There were problems there that we never talked about because nobody had ever really understood what was about to happen. Kathy, Linda had their bedroom next to mine. They had to catch out. I hated it when they had opened my door and stepped into my room, walked across the little room and into the kitchen. It was infuriating to me. This was my room, my room. So every time they came in and I saw them, I didn't care that they only were going to get a cookie. No, no. And I'd come in there and I would be angry with them and I would slam the door when I pushed them out of the room. Stay out of here. And this went over and over. I was now 11. I needed privacy, not having them come into my space. For heaven's sakes, not having come into my space. Well, that went on and on. If I slammed the door downstairs, my father would say, Ellouise, don't do that. Close the door easily. Don't do that other thing. If I slammed the door and told him to get out, mother would be furious. And she would say, you can't do that. You can't do that. And it kept passing back. One Saturday afternoon, I was in there. I was at my little desk and I was writing, was working, and they came in. Do you understand that? They came into my room. It was infuriating. And so I just stood up and said, get out of here. This is my room. Stay out. And so they pushed their way out. And as they did, I took hold of the door and slammed it as hard as I could and make it as loud as it would go. And I stood there and I listened to what was happening. Is outside that door, there was a trickling of something like little beads or little rocks falling down off of the space near the door onto the floor. Well, my sisters stuck their head in. They pushed the door open and they saw what was going on in the hallway. There was this pile of white on the floor where the wall had just cracked and the stuff had just fallen onto the floor, a pile. They just stood there and they laughed, and then they went in their bedroom and shut the door. No one had come so immediately, so I was surprised when Daddy walked in to that little square way, and he looked back, and then Mother saw it and went back, and they got it together. They picked it up, and then what did he do? He took my door off of the wall. He pulled down the steps and he put it up in the attic. He did that. And all I had left was a bigger closet, sure, but no light in it, no nothing. And so I didn't say anything because I knew that there was trouble behind that. So I didn't say a word. And whenever I needed to dress or to change my clothes, I had a light in there, sort of like a lantern light. And I turned it on and quickly dressed and then turned it off and went my business. There was October, November, and December, and there was nothing there for me. But I was not saying a word, and I was not doing any more of those get out of here, don't ever come back here. It was a lesson learned. Well, Christmas morning, we all assembled to go in and see if Santa Claus had been good to us. And my sisters went in with Mother first, and they were laughing. When I came in, they were laughing. And then I looked, and there was a large thing against the wall near the tree, and it was wrapped up, and there was a big bow. And I went over there, It was for me. There was a note on there that said, "For you, Eloise, love, Santa." I ripped the paper off, and sure enough, it was my door. My door had come back. Now, that story in my family was told for years. When I was at home as a young child, or then after I left home or wasn't living there because I was married and had some children, Daddy always told that story. So at one point, I talked to my brother. He's 12 years younger than I am. And he said, "You couldn't tell that story about yourself, could you? Wouldn't be possible. I'm going to tell it this year. You'll be here for Christmas and I'm going to tell it." And I said, "You don't know how. You weren't even born then, so you can't do it." "Eloise, you don't know nothing, honey. You don't know nothing. I've told that story all my life because I learned it from Daddy. And he always told that story as his favorite Christmas story." What do you think about that? Well, I was surprised. I can certainly tell you that. But then now, as you think about storytelling, doesn't that make sense? It's a family story. It's a story in your family. And it doesn't matter who's telling it. It makes me happier than ever to be there at Christmas or to be hearing about how they told it at Christmas. Look at your people during this time when families are together and trade stories that have happened to you or your family. It's like knitting. It pulls those stories together and pulls your family together. Happy years. Happy years. Happy holiday.